This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting at all.
Stop.
Got it.
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And welcome to it, my friends. It is Monday here on the Steve Gruber Show. I appreciate your support. For you Michigan fans out there in mourning, I'm sorry. It's college football, and that's the way that is. For you Michigan State fans, might want to go a little bit easy because no matter what you think, it's a great win for the Spartans. Miracle finish. But no matter what you might be thinking today, I can assure you the days of winning 7 out of 8 of the Wolverines, those days have come and gone, my friends. Michigan had the lead right down till 10 seconds to go in the game, leading 23-21. I'm sure you know all this. A failed special teams effort, and Jalen Watts Jackson picks up the football and makes it into the end zone to win the game on the final play, and a special teams disaster for Michigan and a miracle finish for the Spartans. So congratulations. But apparently the Spartans, I saw a lot of social media talk where Spartan fans were saying, well, Michigan State finally get the respect they deserve in the polls. The answer, no. Apparently not. Not apparently to their satisfaction. The Spartans did not move an inch. They stayed at 7th. And the Wolverines only dropped a couple of notches, remaining at 15th in the polls, meaning the voters still believe that Michigan, apparently, Michigan was the better football team there. But it was a miracle and one for the ages for Michigan State coach Mark D'Antonio, because these things happen every now and then. Every now and then they happen, he said. And there you have it. So the Spartans win the Battle of Michigan. Any comments on that? We'll take them this morning. Yeah, bring them on. I predicted a Michigan win. I was wrong. I can sit right here and tell you. I predicted a Michigan win in the big house, and until 10 seconds to go in the game, I thought that I had it figured out. Me and a few 100,000 others. Yeah. Anyhow, this hour brought to you by Mesa Good Health, Good Business, and Great Schools. There you have it. I was telling some people yesterday, Michigan and Michigan State fans, you guys are all fine and well. And you can sit there and muddle among yourselves or celebrate or whatever the case may be. I actually have to go out on the radio and admit that I was wrong. I'll just sit here with a microphone in my face and say, you know what, I was wrong about that. And wipe that smile off your face. I see a couple of you out there. And I think Ivy was actually wearing a Michigan State sweatshirt during the party. Make sure we're up on 3 over there. And did you have your sweatshirt on?
I did.
Yeah. See,
I felt really terrible, though, because you have to admit, Michigan did play an incredible game. And I kind of started rooting for them once they kicked out the one main defensive.
Yeah, when they bad call
targeting is what it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And I don't remember the guy's name that they threw out. But then I was kind of like, you know what? That was a really bad call. I kind of have to go for it a little bit.
Kind of feels a little sympathy for him, but yeah, what a shocking ending.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I literally was laughing and just disbelief that would happen. Like
wearing the Spartan sweatshirt. Yeah, so it is. Anyway, that's what college football is all about, and that's why you had never attended people don't believe that, but you had never been to a tailgate party or anything like that. But you didn't grow up near a university like this. You just didn't have part of that deal. So last couple of years, you've been going to East Lansing tailgate parties, and look at that.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Your team wins.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Let's see here. Speaking of bragging rights. Michigan now has bragging rights for the first heavy snow of the winter east of the Rockies. What do you think about that? Pretty fired up for winter?
Yeah, our friends, a good friend of ours was up in Boyne and sent us a picture of the couple of inches that they got over there.
Big snow in some places, in fact. Overnight Friday and into Saturday morning, lake effect snow through parts of the Upper Peninsula. A large portion of northwest lower Michigan, including Lake Charlevoix and those places where we got the pictures from. So the Kalkaska area, east of Traverse City, officially reported 5.7 inches of snow over the weekend.
Wow. They kind of got pummeled, huh?
So if you're not ready for winter, too bad. Here it comes. Yeah, too bad. The northwest lower snow belt has received areas of 2 to 5 inches in the winter already. Pretty shocking. Today, though, weather's going to get back a little bit of Indian summer back today, so we have good news as far as that goes. And on today's program, a lot more to talk about than just the football game and the inevitable march of the seasons. Coming up, we'll have Professor Allan Saxe here. We'll have Jim Graham, the manager and director of Driving Skills for Life at Ford Motor Company. Michael Doherty, senior writer for Cyber Defense, one of my favorites here. Uncle Sam is now your starting quarterback. Feds to give new scrutiny to your online lineup. I'm not kidding. You thought FanDuel and DraftKings was a bit problematic? Wait till the federal government starts analyzing who you're putting on your fantasy team. For real. We'll also speak with Saul Newses. He is the former chair of the Michigan Republican Party. He has been on the road beating the stump for Ted Cruz. And Saul's a veteran of these these campaigns and so forth. So he's going to be on the phone talking to us, I believe, from New Hampshire today, telling us what it's like, what this grind is like. Basically, it's a ping pong match. New Hampshire, Iowa. Sometimes stop at home, wash your clothes, and start again. And Ted Cruz doing pretty well in the polls. He's actually going to be on the program with us. Might be this week, actually. But Ted Cruz is going to join us on the program here and talk about his battle to be the next president of the United States. I think that he's a bit of a lightning rod, too much of a lightning rod when it comes to national politics, and I think that'll be problematic for him. But we'll let him explain it to us. So I'll ask the questions that you want asked right here, and that'll be coming up here. We think this week. We're working on that for you. Let me put it this way. He's agreed to join us like so many of the other presidential candidates. We just haven't set a time yet, so that's what we're working on. Also today, Mike Hughes will be here telling us what's great on TV, and then Tim Stout will join us. Tim will be. Did I see this? The Lions got their first win yesterday. Yeah, the Lions won. So there is hope in Mudville, I suppose. But Tim Stout will be here to talk more about the miracle finish for Michigan State and the crushing loss for Michigan. But having said that, I do have a bit of a prediction about that loss. That is the kind of loss that will build a fire under Jim Harbaugh that will not soon be extinguished. So celebrate the victory. And it was a big one. It was a great victory. And like I said, one for the ages. It'll be replayed and replayed and replayed forever. But that might play into Jim Harbaugh's hands as he rebuilds the Michigan program. And keep in mind, they weren't supposed to be on track for this sort of success until at least next year and probably the following year. He's well ahead of schedule. And if he had a quarterback that was as good as Connor Cook, well, Michigan would be pretty close to unstoppable right now. The defense was not bad. One letdown on special teams. The offense was reasonable. It's 14 after the hour. It's Monday on the Steve Gruber Show. Glad to have you on board. The phone number, 888-900-9966. We'll be right back.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
It's Monday and it's 18 after the hour. Going to ignore a couple of more silly comments I've gotten on social media in the last few minutes. We have to move on to more important matters, my friends. Football's a game. The rest of this stuff is serious. And so we're going to shift gears. A Michigan abortion doctor that in the past declared, I believe abortion should be available on demand. I've never turned anyone down. Has now turned up with at least a dozen jars filled with what appear to be fetus parts in the trunk of his car. Dr. Michael Roth, an OBGYN, an outspoken supporter of abortions, allegedly ran over a 32-year-old man in West Bloomfield earlier this month. As a result, even though he is yet to be charged with a crime, his car was impounded. When he asked for access to the trunk, police discovered the containers of human tissue and a powerful anesthetic. The Michigan Attorney General's office believes Roth, again, this outspoken supporter of abortion on demand anytime, anywhere, and he's never turned anybody down. They believe that he has been performing illegal abortions and for some perverse reason kept the remains in effect mason jars in the trunk of his car. Roth's request for items from his car allegedly turned up a drug later identified as fentanyl, a drug the DEA describes as potentially lethal. I mean, you probably heard of fentanyl. It's very powerful. Even at low levels, it can be deadly, and which is frequently used to reduce pain during abortion procedures. That discovery prompted police to open the trunk, where they found 14 jars containing what appear to be chopped up babies, frankly. If you're a pro-choice individual, just you explain to me how this is okay. Dr. Roth had been accused of malpractice for botched abortions at least 6 times between 1988 and 2015, according to published reports. Some of those complaints involved abortions performed at Roth's home that resulted in serious complications. Another report included this passage. In 2005, Roth's wife claimed in an application for a restraining order that she lives locked in a basement. Out of fear, Roth would continue to assault, attack, molest, wound, follow, confront, and otherwise injure her, as well as continue to prescribe and administer medication to her. Dr. Michael Roth, driving around apparently with chopped up babies in his trunk. Meanwhile, here in Michigan, those that are staunchly opposed to abortion are focusing their efforts on a fairly common second trimester abortion procedure, pushing bills in the Republican-led legislature to prohibit what they say is dismemberment of fetuses. Similar criminal bans have been approved in at least 2 states, Kansas and Oklahoma. Both are on hold after court rulings, but they've been passed there. The Michigan legislation was the subject of a House hearing this past week and could advance this fall. The procedure called, now listen to the name of the procedure. The procedure is called dilation and evacuation. Doesn't that kind of speak for itself? Isn't that kind of, isn't that self-evident? If the procedure is called dilation and evacuation, I don't mean to give you a visual at this hour, but there it is. It accounted for 2,264, or 8% of the state's 27,600 plus reported abortions in 2014, not including, of course, Dr. Roth's abortions, which went unreported. About 86% of abortions occurred in the first trimester, 14% afterwards. 8% of these are apparently this dilation and evacuation. D&E is a gruesome, horrific, and cruel type of abortion procedure whereby tiny unborn humans are literally ripped apart, said the bill's sponsor, Republican Rep. Laura Cox of Livonia, while speaking to the House Criminal Justice Committee. It seems unconscionable to me that this type of abortion exists, and it is time that this practice ended. So I have to challenge you now. I have to challenge you morally. I have to ask you a question. Number one, are you opposed to this sort of an abortion? And I would think that most, thinking, feeling people are probably opposed to something called dilation and evacuation. If you get mom to dilate and then extract the fetus, then what are you doing? You're extracting a human being. That's number one. Number two, though, however, and this is where I challenge you, where do you come down when it comes to increasing welfare for the poor? My point being is this. If you're going to stand in opposition to abortion, which I think you're moral and proper to do, then how do you justify saying we're not going to pay more for poor children? If you're not going to pay more for poor children, then you're going to stand in opposition to abortion, which in this case seems appropriate. But then say you're not going to provide for these children the appropriate level of care. Does that seem to make sense? There seems to be some disconnect there. Now, having said that, there are plenty of programs out there. But it gets you to think this morning, and I want you to take time to think about that concept. If you're going to stand in opposition to abortion, which I'm with you there, but how far do you stand in opposition to, aid to dependent children and money for single mothers, and how far down the welfare line are you willing to go in support of your pro-life stance? How far are you willing to go? Now, there's something for you to think about on a Monday, huh? I'm not letting you off the hook today, am I? The phone number is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can find out a lot more by going to stevegruber.com. Now, listen, you can go there and you can post your comments, and you can post your comments about this conversation or any conversation we have here. You can go listen to previous programs. You can listen live at work because there's a listen live button. If you have a computer, you can take us there. Go to stevegruber.com, click the listen live button. If you're on your way into the office right now, take us along for the ride. It's 25 after. I'm Steve Gruber. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
All right, 33 at the hour on a Monday. Brian's been on the line in Southern Michigan for a while, and I give you credit for riding it out there, Brian. Had a comment on the football game. You're up. What's on your mind?
Good morning, Steve. Yeah, I was watching the game on Saturday, and it's almost like a bookie paid that punter to mess the game up, $100,000 or whatever. I was watching the special on ESPN Films or whatever, and these basketball players, college basketball players, took a fall. I missed the shot or whatever.
Yeah, well,
how do you miss that? It's one thing if he would have kicked it wrong or something. It just, I don't know. It
nerves, man.
So fake.
That's a pressure cooker.
He blew the game.
Yeah, well, maybe. And I don't disagree with you, Brian, and I appreciate you waiting to get your comments in. The fact of the matter is that's a pressure cooker. There's some kids from Australia, by the way, who had a great day. One of his punts earlier in the day was 80 yards. And then he got a bunch of death threats on social media. So I think maybe a few folks are taking this a little bit too seriously. It's a football game, boys and girls. It's a football game. It's not a matter of life and death, Brian. That's the truth. But tell you what is a matter of life and death, what we were talking about afterwards. Tom is on the line in Grand Rapids this morning, checking in on that other story we were discussing. Tom, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I hope I don't come across like a fire and brimstone preacher now, but I want to talk about abortion. I mean, I'm pro-life, okay? I'm against abortion, and I was raised in the 50s when I was given a Catholic education, thank the good Lord, where we were taught that, hey, life begins at conception, and as soon as a woman conceives, she's lost her choice thing. I mean, once she allows intercourse and conceives a life in her womb, she has no right to take this life. I mean, whether it be rape or incest or what, and life conception occurs at a very small percentage after a rape or incident. But even if that occurs, she has no right to take the life. So the pro-life crowd lost the argument years ago. But my point I want to make is the nation went down a slippery slope starting in 1963 when Mary Madeline O'Hare, with the help of the ACLU, succeeded in getting God and discipline out of our public schools. Then in 1973, legalized abortion was legitimized. What the hell kind of society does that?
Well,
legalizes the killing of its progeny in the womb. And now, this year, 2015, we okayed same-sex marriage, another attack on the basic unit of society, the family. We don't have any real good leaders in the country anymore. What the hell happened to the Kennedys when you said what can you do for your country, not what can your country do for you, or Eisenhower's or Patton's. But what I believe is that our pastors have let us down. The Catholic bishops are hiding under their desks, and even the Christian churches. The churches are beholden to their 501(c), so they're more beholden to the money than to their principle.
Can't serve two gods, Tom. Can't serve two gods. You can't serve money and God because you lose in that proposition. Good conversation, Tom, and I think you speak for a lot of folks in that age bracket that are disgusted with where we are, fed up, angry, and I appreciate you checking in today. Thank you so much for calling. All right, so there you have it. Tom checking in, and again, you give us a call, we'll talk about it. 888-900-9966, the Common Sense Hotline. 888-900-9966. No good leaders left. I there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's a few, but there's not many. And there's, Kennedy or Eisenhower, true leaders. Whether you believed in their ideology or not, they were leaders. And they led this, and they believed in this country first and foremost, and they believed in the goodness of the people here and the families. I mean, in the 40s and 50s, the families were, the cornerstone of this country. America won World War II with an 8th grade education. Think about that. America won World War II when the aggregate education was 8th grade. But let me tell you something. An 8th grade education in 1940 was far superior to a high school education in 2015. And that, my friends, is the truth, whether you like it or not. And you can run along and study for your ACT, but I will tell you something. 8th grade education in 1940 meant you could read and write and do arithmetic and balance a damn checkbook. That's a fact. Switching now to Professor Allan Saxe. He's sitting patiently on hold, listening to me, get class started here. Professor, thanks for coming to class again this week.
You are absolutely correct. I tell my students that all the time. They believe that their grade averages are so high, that they're so bright, because their teachers and their parents and everybody else tells them that every single day. They couldn't hold a candle to the people that fought in the Second World War. However, with that being said, I think if our society was more demanding of young people, they would respond. No,
there's not. What we have in this country, and I'll give you an example at my father's expense, because he's not here to defend himself, but at my father's expense, who graduated from Michigan State University in 1960 with about a 2.7 grade point average, and went on to work for Dow Chemical Corporation for a career, and he graduated in fisheries and wildlife. 2.7, you think, well, gosh, he wasn't a very good student. Let me tell you something. A 2.7 got him an interview with Dow Chemical to become a pharmaceutical rep, for which he did that job for the next 30 years. A pretty demanding and tough job where you have to know a lot of medical terms and so on and so forth and deal with the medical profession. You couldn't even get through the door with a 3.7 grade point average today, and the fact of the matter is these professors, these high school teachers, give away grades at such a rate that the grade points in this country are inflated every year, year after year, year over year, because the way they get themselves pay raises and benefits through the union is to say, look, my students are getting 3 5s and 4 points. It's not because the kids are actually 3, 5, and 4 point students. It's because we give away grades each and every day.
I believe that a lot of our teachers today and college professors are not going to admit this. They literally are fearful of their students. They don't want any complaints. They don't want anything, so they're passing them also. I get a big kick out of the fact when a lot of people say we have to prepare our high school students for college. What they don't know is, and the colleges are not going to admit this, that the colleges are bending their standards too very dramatically. So when the high school students go to college, they think it's on the same terms as when your father went to college, and that certainly is not the case. It's
not the case. Let me tell you something else, and I'll get back to this in a moment. I went to my daughter's graduation here a couple of years ago from high school. 15 kids in a class of 150. 10% of the kids graduated with perfect 4.0s. Really? My ass. Right. Hold on right there 1 second, Professor. We're going to go to the hotline real quick. We've got Jerry on the line in Iron Mountain this morning. We'll get back on some common sense here. Jerry, welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, I definitely believe it's at conceivement, because when my daughter was born and the doctor, took her and wiped her off and then placed her in my wife's arms, she looked dead up at us, right into my eyes, and said, "I love you," clear as day. And her voice she has now, 7 years later, and everybody's eyes bugged out of their head. 3 days later, we're at home. My wife says, I'm holding my daughter and talking to her and telling her, "See, I told you there's more out there than meets the eye, life after death, stuff like that, God and all that." And she says, well, maybe that's not what I heard. And she did it again in my arms, as if to throw fire to all the words I've said and preaching and stuff. Because I was preaching to my doctor about vaccines, and she needed to really look into that. And then later on, she thanked us right before the doctors got federalized under Obamacare and started coming into the office with little laptops.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. It's Monday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
If you don't like what you see here, nobody wants to take your prisoner.
All right, welcome back to it. 45 after the hour. We're on with Professor Allan Saxe discussing, well, we kind of got sidetracked down grade inflation and so forth. Can you imagine today, though? Yeah, and I think you're right, Professor, when you said that these teachers and professors, they don't want the hassle. They don't want the snag. They don't want pushback. They don't want to get sued, for God's sake, by people because their kids' grades aren't high enough. I mean, I think that there's some concern on several levels. My mother's taught elementary school for 30 years, and she finally left in the early 90s when they said you can't touch in any way to restrain a disruptive or potentially violent student. She said, I can't be in a classroom where I can't be in charge of the safety of all the students, and she left because you touch a student now, and you get arrested for assault, you get sued for assault, all this nonsense. The fact of the matter is, there are a lot of unruly little snot-nosed little kids who need to be put in their seat stiffly in their seat and told how to behave themselves. If the parents want to rely on the schools to be the babysitters, which by and large many of them do, then by God, let them be babysitters the way they should be.
There is a protected class of students as well, and there are some groups of students that you just cannot discipline, you cannot get.
Oh, yes, you can.
And there are certain, and many of the teachers and professors at the college level just don't want to go there. They don't want the hassle, and that's maybe understandable, but it's a society that we've created that has made us
of spoiled, entitled little snot-nosed brats who think that they're entitled to everything that they have not earned. That society, is that the group you're referring to?
That's the society, but it's really pretty bad in many ways. I walked by a classroom on Friday, at a community college, not at the university where I am at, a community college. I was a guest speaker there, and I walked by some classrooms, and there wasn't a party going on, but it looked like it. There were two students sitting eating pizza with their feet on the desk, eating pizza, and the teacher was just going ahead and talking just like it was a normal class. Now, maybe this particular teacher, she may have allowed it, but I have a hunch she just didn't want to discipline those students.
Well, here's the problem, and Ivy just pointed this out. Ivy's sitting across the way here in the studio this morning. She said the problem is that parents don't back the teachers anymore; they back their kid.
Oh, of course.
I mean, which is the same thing. Oh, my kid should be starting on the basketball team. Your kid's 5'1" and lousy. Yeah, but my kid, it's ridiculous. Parents have this notion that somehow their progeny is the greatest thing ever. Hey, I got an idea. Shut up.
But I'm talking about college students.
I know.
And by the way, there are even some college students who could be classified easily as adults. And sometimes they're not much better than what you see in kindergarten. They walk in and out of classrooms. Their smartphones are their life, and they use those constantly during the classroom. And it's very, very difficult for professors to get a hold of that kind of stuff. And that's the nature of education today.
Yeah, there's a way to get a hold of that. It's called an F.
That's right, exactly.
It's called an F, and here are the rules for my class. There are no smartphones. If you're caught up with a smartphone on more than one occasion, or whatever you decide the cutoff is, you dropped 1 full grade. If it's 3 times, 2 full grades. 3 times, you fail the class. And those are the rules. Because
a lot of them do that, but a lot of them just don't want the hassle. They want to be popular. They want to get through the class day as best as they can. But this goes on very much. But you're not going to find many professors saying this, because any criticism comes back to them.
Let me ask you this. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to do this, but I know you've told me this before. How old are you?
I am 76.
And how long have you been teaching school?
This is my 51st year.
All right. In 51 years, do you believe, Professor Saxe, that you are guilty of grade inflation?
Yes.
So you admit it. You do the same thing.
Absolutely. I have very different standards today than I did years ago.
Why?
I set it out in the book. But if I had the same standards that I had many years ago, easily half the class would fail. They can't read. They have a very different attitude.
Well, then why do you let them get away with it? I mean, the problem. I mean, the problem starts at home, Professor. Yours,
right.
Apparently.
There would be an enormous kickback. What it is, I'm being brutally honest, and you could talk to, I imagine, 50, 75% of the professors, and if they were honest, they would say the same thing. Now, it depends on the classes that you teach. I'm not in engineering. I'm not in chemistry. I'm not in physics. I'm not in the hard sciences. I have to teach every student that comes by because government, the introductory classes I teach are required by the state of Texas. And so every student that comes through college comes through my classes more or less. And so it's a very different student body today that I teach. And by the way, the difference is also I'm teaching students from all over the world, Texas government. So there's students in my classroom from Pakistan, Bangladesh,
But let me ask you something
Nigeria,
before we
and
run.
I'm trying to tell them who LBJ is.
And you should. Lyndon Baines Johnson. You should talk about who he was. Terrible president. My estimation.
I agree.
But terrible president. But let me ask you, he gets a lot of credit for things that he was just a power-hungry pig. And I think I say that with all the love intended. Do you think the downturn began with smartphones? I mean, honestly, this proliferation of electronics. We were headed down, and did they accelerate the advance?
Before that. I would say if it goes back in an analytical way, I think it goes back to the Vietnam War days. And by the way, I'm admitting things. Do you remember in the 1960s and maybe early 1970s when the big colleges and universities actually closed down so the students could go to Washington to protest about Vietnam?
Yes, they
literally would close down. And in fact, we have some of them doing some of the same things today where they let a few students off to go do things,
As far as I can tell, Professor, a lot of our universities have remained closed since that time, closed-minded. They've closed off opportunity. They've closed to free thinking.
And political correctness
exactly
we have not
right.
even begun to discuss.
Yeah, but we can next time. Professor Allan Saxe, everybody, political science at the University of Texas, Arlington. A great conversation as always, my friend.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. It's the professor. He's in, and class will resume here on the Steve Gruber Show in just a moment.